Making Monsters with Taylor Dahl. It's like beer and brats, a perfect combination.
You know the deal.
All right, welcome everybody to another episode of Making Monsters. I'm Taylor Dahl, and we're continuing on the offseason. Now that free agency is done, the draft is done, we're kind of getting settled into OTAs right now and seeing some, a little bit, the passes that we get excited about at this time of year when we just see Caleb Williams throwing to Rome or Gerald Everett, and those things get us excited. And today I'm joined by Adam Hoge. He is of CHGO Bears. Adam, thanks for hopping on with me.
Thanks for having me, Taylor. Looking forward to this. And yeah, I love this time of year because, first of all, the weather's a little bit nicer up here in Chicago. And then on top of it, we get to see some practices like as we're recording this today, we'll get to see an OTA and see what it all looks like with our own eyes instead of just having to rely on the Twitter clips the Bears are putting out.
Yeah, this is that time of year. I've already seen Adam on Twitter, the Chase Claypool OTA clips, and I'm like, this is that time of year where we get excited about some stuff that maybe we shouldn't, but let us have it. I'm just going to say, let us have it. Let us be excited. Obviously, the Bears, we have a lot to be excited about this season, and let's start. Let's take a look back at the offseason, and let's go to free agency first. So there were definitely, we could kind of put an outline of the things that the Bears needed heading into free agency. And one of the ones that kind of popped out to me that I feel like we haven't talked a ton about is the loss or the departure, the separation with Eddie Jackson and taking Kevin Byard. What were your thoughts on that initially, that move? I know Ryan Poles was pretty vocal about he wanted a veteran safety to come in there and take his place a little more affordable.
Yeah, and I think durability was a big factor in that swap too. Now, to be honest, we got to remember the Bears didn't necessarily know when they made the move from Eddie Jackson that Kevin Byard was going to be available, and he became available early before the main free agency started because he was let go, and that makes him eligible to sign right away. So the Bears, again, got a little lucky there, but pounced right away and got him in the building. And I think, just the fact that, every time I say this out loud, I hate it because you don't want to jinx it, but Kevin Byard, brought it up himself, how he's never missed a practice, which is incredible. For anybody in the NFL to be able to say that, especially a veteran, like Kevin Byard. So I think that's a huge factor. I think, they're tackling wise, I think it's an upgrade. I think range, and maybe some of the ball skills will be a slight downgrade, but if the durability is there, I think this was a very sensible swap, and overall should pay off. That was one of the things I was worried about in this offseason. I still thought Eddie Jackson was a solid player despite some of his shortcomings. And so by making that move, and I certainly understood it financially, but to make that move, how are they going to replace him? I was thinking early on in the offseason, is this a draft pick? Is this somebody young that they're bringing in? But they end up bringing a veteran like Kevin Byard.
Yeah, and I liked it too. I think that when the missed tackle rate was one that a lot of people pointed to when it happened, of just how significantly different it was with him and Eddie. But then we move over to one of probably the bigger signings, offseason free agent signings, not including the trade aspect, I guess, with DJ Moore that the Bears have done in a while, and that's bringing in Keenan Allen and Gerald Everett from the Chargers. That one I think is obvious. I don't think I heard one person complain about either of these guys being additions to the Bears. Maybe some people saying, oh, you already have Cole Kmet, why would you bring in another one? But the answer is Shane Waldron. So thoughts obviously on those and how impactful you think they can both be on this offense with Shane and now Caleb Williams.
Yeah, I mean, again, give Ryan Poles credit for, a little bit of luck. But pouncing on it when it became available, because I don't think that they necessarily thought that Keenan Allen was going to be available. And, that I know a lot of teams around the league were monitoring what was going on with the Chargers, new coaching staff, and they seemingly had to budge somewhere with their salary cap and let somebody go. But at that time, I know the Bears were doing their homework on Mike Williams, and then Keenan Allen became available, and the Bears pivoted very, very quickly. And in this case, had to give up some draft capital to do it. But, I think when you looked at it, and all Bears fans did, they certainly understood, 4th round pick for a guy like Keenan Allen who, if he's able to stay healthy, which is the big question, but if he can, you're talking about completely changing the landscape of this Bears wide receiver group and giving Caleb Williams somebody that he can depend on right away. One of the best slot receivers in the league, just knows how to get open, and just murders zone coverage. So I think when you look at these weapons across the board for what Caleb Williams has, I mean, he's facing much tougher competition. He's also inheriting a much better situation around him than he was dealing with at USC last season.
Yeah, Adam, let's talk about those draft picks for a little bit, because I think that was a big criticism on for a lot of people on Ryan Poles this offseason. Entering the draft with just 4 picks, obviously we know he ended up trading some capital for next year to move up and get Austin Booker, so it ended up being with 5. But were you concerned at all heading into the draft that he only had 4 picks?
No, because, I think what people kind of miss in this conversation is how much the Bears project ahead and look at not just this year's draft classes, but the next year's. And it took us a little while, myself included, to understand the lack of depth in this draft class. But by the time you got to October, November, you talk to people around the league and they were all kind of saying the same thing, that this was not going to be a very deep draft. And I think that smart front offices like the Bears evidently have right now saw that last year, even going into before last year's draft, they're paying attention. That's why they get paid to do this for a living, is they were paying attention to the impact that COVID was still having on college football, NIL, and some of the stuff that's keeping more kids in school longer because they can get paid to take another year of development. So it's just a different landscape that's affecting the NFL. And I think especially this year, the Bears recognize that. So I think if you're looking ahead, you're letting that, change your perspective on giving up draft capital. I mean, obviously the Montez Sweat trade was a draft pick and a big one, but it's paid off. Then you start, using another pick on Keenan Allen, and it's just, in the end, it was the year to do it. And on top of that, I think people are also forgetting that, as long as you're not making a habit of doing that every single year, and in the grand scheme of things, you're still making plenty of draft picks, you're going to be okay. And the Bears, over Ryan Poles' 3 drafts now, I think it's still 25 picks, which is above the average of 7 that you get every year that you start with. So they're still ahead of the pace in terms of the amount of picks that they've made under Ryan Poles, despite not making many picks this year.
Yeah, and Adam, and I think one of the important things too is they had the 1st and 9th pick. Like, the value of those 2 picks alone kind of outshines some of those later picks, especially in a draft that we had this year where it was kind of a fall off. A lot of people said after the 3rd round pretty much, but we had several years with Ryan Pace where we didn't even have a 1st round pick. And now you had 2 with Ryan Poles, and people were complaining that 2 of the 4 were on the top. So it was an interesting offseason. I think all of us could agree on that. Another thing coming out of this last season that a lot of people wanted to focus on, the trenches, and this is both sides, offensive line, defensive line, a little bit more pass rush. We talked a ton about the addition of Montez Sweat and how he added so much value to that line, how he helped Andrew Billings, he helped Javon Dexter. I think he even helped Justin Jones get a contract elsewhere. But I think, and then the other side, obviously there were struggles, more so injury, I think, on offensive line. We didn't really get to see that full starting line of what we were supposed to see much play together. But they went and made a few moves. Obviously, the Ryan Bates move, which Ryan Poles has had his eye on for a while, Coleman Shelton. They went and traded up for Austin Booker, or traded in to the 5th round for Austin Booker. So what are your thoughts on the trenches? Are they improved enough to get by this season? Do you think it needs a little more help, another signing or 2 for this summer?
Yeah, I mean, this is the biggest thing that I think as we sit here in late May now that is going to make or break the season. And it makes me a little nervous being a big line of scrimmage guy and believing in building in the trenches. I think the Bears have a lot of that word potential that can be very dangerous to bank on. But, in a perfect world, if Ryan Bates makes this seamless transition to center, and makes the Bills look silly for not really playing him as a starter, then the offensive line should be much better, because we all know that the Bears center play has been, embarrassing
Bad.
lately.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's it's causing me a lot of headaches, watching the film on Mondays after games. And so, but was it the best upgrade that you could have? I mean, I'm certainly skeptical right now. I want to see it. There's not a lot of tape out there on Ryan Bates to watch to know that's going to work out. Ryan Poles obviously has a vision for this guy that was grander than what the Bills did. So maybe it works out, and that would be great. And then all of a sudden the whole offensive line, I think, looks a lot better. But if it doesn't, because you don't bat 100 or 1,000, I should say, as a GM. And if it doesn't work out, then I think a lot of the offensive line could look similar. But you're still banking on, obviously, Darnell Wright to take that next step forward, and I like that pick a lot still. So but a lot of the same questions remain. Like, can Tevin Jenkins stay healthy? Right? Can Nate? I do think Nate Davis is a candidate, though, to have a much better second year. I've said this elsewhere, but his situation almost reminded me of when Robert Quinn got to Chicago. Robert Quinn went through some things behind the scenes. Not every player transitions to a new city quickly, and Robert Quinn got much more comfortable in year 2, and then obviously had that record-breaking season. So I do think Nate Davis is a candidate to step up and have a much better year, but I just don't see enough of the questions answered at this point in the offseason that it makes me a little nervous. And I think the same thing can be said on defense, because I like Javon Dexter. I like him a lot, but I'm still wondering if he's the best fit for 3 technique in this scheme. And so can he go out there and prove to us all in August in training camp that he's gotten a lot better? Sure. That would be great. That would be massive. So it's like, if I had to pick 2 players that maybe, aren't the superstars on the team that can still make or break the season, that are maybe the difference between, this team being a 9-win team and an 11-win team, I would say it's Ryan Bates at center and Javon Dexter at the 3 technique, because if those 2 guys click, I think their entire lines around them look much different.
Yeah, that's a good point. And honestly, a good question too to ask, because I'm sure people have different opinions on that. What do you think about the edge? Do you think they'll add? Do you think they'll try and go get Yannick Ngakoue? Do you think they'll just try and run it back with DeMarcus Walker on the other side?
Yeah, again, I don't think that this is a spot that the Bears need to rush into a decision. I think eventually they do add, but let's not take reps away from Austin Booker right now, because I really did like him, and I think he is one of these players that could surprise in the same way that Braxton Jones did on the offensive line a couple of years ago, where all of a sudden we're in June going, oh man, this guy's running with the ones. Now, I don't necessarily think that's going to happen. I do think we're all sort of guilty of forgetting that DeMarcus Walker is on this roster and still a starter. And honestly has a big role in that locker room too. I think he's viewed as a leader. So, I don't know that any of us really give DeMarcus Walker enough credit. But that being said, he was there last year and they still went out and got Yannick Ngakoue. Now that was before they had Montez Sweat, so the situation is a little bit different. But Walker's still there. Austin Booker, I think, is a candidate to flash here early as a rookie. I hate to say it, I'm kind of out on Dominique Robinson at this point. I think he's a candidate to maybe get cut, but maybe he takes a step forward. But you still have Khalid Kareem farther down in the depth chart. I mean, it's just, don't take reps away from some of these guys right now. See if it can be figured out in the offseason as you have these practices. And then if not, there's always guys that you can sign in August if you need to, or a trade you can make. Forget August, like they did last year with Montez Sweat. You do have that draft capital, that extra 2nd-round pick next year. If you have to go out there and make a big move because you feel like you're one defensive end away, those are all options. So I just don't think it's something you need to rush into right now.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point because when you do have some of these guys that maybe you want to see another, I was a big Dominique Robinson fan after his first season, so I'm kind of bummed that I feel like it hasn't played out the way that I thought it would. And then to your point with Demarcus Walker is such an interesting person because when we talked about when he first came to Chicago, all his 7 sacks in Tennessee were on the inside, and so people are like, why aren't they rotating him more inside? But I went back because I was curious of last year. I want to say maybe 2.5, 3 sacks, something he had last year. All were from the outside, and was once Jan went out, he started performing pretty well on the outside when he was across from Montez. So that's something interesting too to keep an eye on. Would it look different this year with Demarcus Walker on that side because of Montez Sweat being able to draw some more attention on that side of the line? And then, like you said, especially if you are creating some more pass rush from the inside when it comes to with Jerron Dexter and Andrew Billings and, the rotation that Eberflus likes to have. So it'll be interesting. I like the thought of just kind of playing it out for now and then seeing if they, once we get to camp, if things are not looking the way they want, maybe making a move then. Let's look a little bit at Caleb Williams because there's all sorts of predictions of what his stat line could possibly look like this season. And, the worst possible, the best possible. But let's just say, in your eyes, a successful season for Caleb would look like what?
Well, I think there's both some, more tangible numbers you need to attach to that. But also, and I think anybody who's followed this team and certainly fans can understand this, just sort of that feeling that there's no doubt that this is the guy, you know what I mean? Yeah. And I think that's more of just a feel, rather than what the numbers are. I do think, and I've been saying this, since the start of the raging Justin Fields, Caleb Williams debate that, and I still believe this without a doubt. In fact, I almost feel it now. Like it felt like a bold take because of the environment we were in, I think a few months ago, but now it just seems more like common sense. I really do feel like Caleb Williams' floor was what Justin Fields already was as a passer, when we're talking the passing numbers. And I do think it would be very disappointing if Caleb Williams did not outperform Justin Fields' passing numbers. But now that we're kind of a little bit removed from all that, like that and the weapons you see that Caleb Williams has,
yeah,
that almost seems like a no-brainer at this point. And so it really would be disappointing. And I don't even, I'm not even that worried about it. So I think like at a minimum, we got to be talking about a 3,000 yard passing season. I certainly think he has the potential to do more than that. I mean, my co-host Mark Carman has already said he thinks he'll go over 4,000 passing yards as a rookie, which has obviously never happened for any Bears quarterback ever. And I think that's on the table. I mean, I don't know if I'm going to go that far because I am trying to stay grounded still in the fact that this is a rookie quarterback, and there's always an adjustment period, no matter how good you are or how many weapons you have around you. But there is a lot of truth to the idea that Caleb Williams is in a much better situation than most number 1 overall picks are. I think he has a chance to kind of blow everybody away here early. But yeah, I feel like a broken record saying this every year, but we can't be here a year from now, like still sort of wondering, is this the guy? And I do feel very confident that Caleb Williams is going to give, all of us a different feel as we're having those discussions. And I think it's going to happen relatively quickly, actually, once these games start getting played.
Yeah, Adam, I was very pro keep Justin. I wanted them to give him more time, but I wasn't one of the people that were like, I'm not a fan if they draft Caleb Williams. I completely understood like the unique situation the Bears were in when it came to this. Like they had the number 1 pick and they didn't absolutely suck last year. And so it was something they couldn't pass up. But now the further I've gotten away from the subject and the topic and Justin Fields being gone, I'll have conversations with people and I'll find myself things I was defending Justin for last season. I'd be like, why was I defending why was I defending under 100 passing yards in multiple games like that? Why was I doing that? I love Justin Fields. I wish the best for him. I think some of the situations were not the best here, obviously in Chicago, and from day one, he was kind of thrown into the fire with things. So I wish him all the luck. But when you take a step back of like kind of just the love you have for the personality and that draft day feeling of when they drafted Justin, you start to realize some things that you're like, okay, well, maybe this wasn't what maybe I was. There was a little haze there. I wasn't seeing everything clearly. A couple more before I let you go, because I know you have to head out. So I want to talk a little bit about Shane Waldron. Thoughts on Shane Waldron? How much this offense do you think is going to just look overall different? Obviously added pieces too, but just schematically and everything like that we kind of got frustrated with last year with Luke Getsy.
Yeah, I think when people ask me that question, it's interesting because I honestly feel like a lot of the things that Justin struggled at last year within the offense they had, Caleb would have done a lot better. Just in terms of his ability to change his arm angles and get the ball out. It's a little bit of a misconception of the actual numbers attached to Caleb Williams and, how long he holds on to the football, because I mean, the number's a number. There's obviously some truth to it, but when you really watch the tape, it's more of a product of, trying to make more plays downfield and probably passing on some options underneath. That it's not that he's not seeing them, it's that he's just choosing to pass up on them for a bigger play. And some of that needs to be coached down a little bit. I don't want him to change who he is, so that's always a tricky situation. But when you just zero in on some of I think the key moments of last season where Justin Fields had a very quick, easy throw to the outside on some of those screens that everybody hated, but they were there if he just threw it quicker, and everything was just so methodical. Caleb's very different in that he is ball out, like catch, throw, and he'll change his arm angles on some of those. And when you look at the weapons he has, the idea of, getting that into Keenan Allen's hands quickly, throwing more slants quickly on third downs, like things like that. This is going to be a tough thing for Bears fans to manage a little bit when I bring this stuff up, but even before I knew Caleb Williams idolized Aaron Rodgers as a quarterback, I was comping him to Aaron Rodgers and just watching his tape. There is a lot of that. And so I really hope that the Bears can lean into some of those things that we used to see the Packers just pick on the Bears with. Just picture Aaron Rodgers to Devontae Adams, and how many times when it was just 3rd and 5 or 3rd and 4, you're like, well, this is going to be a first down. They're just going to throw an easy slant, and they're going to get this, and they're going to move the chain. So it's like, those are the stuff and the things that I hope Shane Waldron leans into. And, everything I've heard about him schematically, people rave about. I'm interested to see, his ability to command the room, some of that stuff. I mean, certainly we've heard some players. We had that infamous moment with Jackson Smith and Jigba at the Super Bowl. I would just caution with that. Everyone needs to realize that there's never been a coach that's been unanimously loved, within a team at any level. Like, even me coaching special teams in high school. Like, I know there's kids on our team that probably don't love me. Like, it's just part of being a coach. And so if you get the wrong player, and not necessarily the wrong player, but just happen to have the one player who doesn't love the guy with a microphone, it can come out. And that doesn't mean the guys, can't relate to players, because we certainly have heard it from others that love him, like Gerald Everett, that came here with Shane Waldron and raves about the guy. So, but it is something to watch going forward here. I do think schematically, though, there's a fit here, especially with the talent that they brought in. And even though it's, it is a new offense and there'll probably be some growing pains with a rookie quarterback, I think overall, I'll be shocked if we're sitting here in week 8, 9, being like, whoa, this is just not working. What's going on here? Because that's usually how it is with the Bears, but I think it is going to be different this year.
Yeah, I think a lot of us are hoping so. And with that Shane Waldron, because we here in Jacksonville, I work with the guy Denny Thompson, who this offseason worked a lot with Caleb Williams and Austin Reed, too, who is also signed undrafted with the Bears. And he said that they both rave about Shane Waldron so far. And so I hear little things like that. And like you said, there's always somebody in the building, like no matter where you work, that doesn't like a specific person. So you kind of just have to do it on your own. Final one, Adam, before I let you go. And this is just kind of an overall question of where the Bears are in the organization, because I feel like you mentioned, we should know pretty quickly if Caleb Williams is the guy. And I think a lot of people will make that decision pretty early on. But when you look at the zoomed out perspective of how this organization has changed so much with Ryan Poles, from the fact of like every other quarterback, when it comes to Justin Fields and Jay Cutler and Trubisky, they've traded capital for. They got capital and was able to get Caleb Williams. When you look at giving Cole Kmet and Jalen Johnson contracts, the Bears have been in the bottom half of the league when it comes to giving guys second contracts, and whether that be because they couldn't draft or they couldn't develop. Now we're finding these guys and we're finding talent and we're developing talent. And this is just something that for like historically we haven't had in the last 20, 25 years. So your zoomed out perspective of what Ryan Poles and the front office has been able to do with this organization and where they're headed.
Yeah, well, I think we're going to see it too in the upcoming years, relatively quickly here with possible contract extensions coming up, that the new problem the Bears are going to have is having to choose between the guys they've drafted to extend. Yeah. And that's another thing that I think somewhat got missed in the Caleb Williams, Justin Fields debate. Is it, yes, you're resetting the rookie clock and all that. We get that. But you're also putting this rookie quarterback in a more advantageous position where you don't really have to waste a year of development. Like the Bears should be ready to compete, maybe not win, but realistically compete for the division this year. And it wouldn't necessarily be a shock if they went out there and actually won it. So you're putting this clock in motion now in the first year of the rookie deal. And people know this by now, but like this is the next 4 years starting now is really the go window when you're going to have the financial flexibility, because if you do hit on Caleb, as you're hitting on guys like Jaquan Brisker, right, and Kyler Gordon, guys you're hoping to pay that are already going into year 3 now, it's going to become more difficult to keep all these guys. That's the problem you want to have. That's the problem you're trying to get to. So, but I do think that even though it's a little bit early to make full decisions on those types of players, you're starting to see the signs of that coming to fruition and understanding that, like, okay, yeah, this is part of the reason why Poles had to make this move to start over at the quarterback position, because the spot you don't want to be is where you're starting to develop these good problems of having to pay some of these guys, and we just threw all this money at Daniel Jones.
Yeah,
that's where you don't want to be. And I'm not saying that Justin Fields would have been that, but there was a possibility that you were going to end up paying Justin and then still just being stuck with this somewhat of a question mark on if this is truly the guy that's going to lead you to a Super Bowl. And we don't know that about Caleb yet either, but we do know that the clock has started over and you have this 4-year window to have this flexibility and continue to build around him too. So I think that that's just a huge example of how things are different with the Bears under Ryan Poles. And I think people are going to start to see that.
Yeah, I think obviously one of the next ones that we'll be talking about is Tevin. And I think a lot of those questions will be how healthy he is this season. I love Tevin Jenkins. When he's on the field, I feel like the offensive line looks completely different, and he's probably one of the best in the league when he's healthy. But do you pay somebody if they can't stay out there? And that's where those questions start to come up. So I think that's the next one we'll probably be talking about.
Yeah, I think so too. And I will say on that is I wouldn't expect him to get extended before the season starts. I think, in other circumstances, he would have been somebody like last year, we were talking about Cole Kmet, right? Getting the extension, and then he did, right? Started training camp, and then what was going to happen with Jalen Johnson, that one ended up going a little bit longer. I think in Tevin's case, the Bears still need to see more from him, and it's much more likely that he would just be in a play it out and prove it mode to stay healthy. And if he does, he'll get paid by somebody. Maybe it'll still be the Bears, but I don't think they'll be in a rush to pay him now.
Yeah, I agree. All right, Adam. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I know everything's busy, but we're in the full swing of off season. So I really appreciate you hopping on with me.
Yeah. Thank you, Taylor. You do great work. Appreciate you having me on.
Thanks so much. Have a good one.